All right, a happy Friday. A happy playoff Friday from the Path to Interference podcast. It has been 4 long years since we've been here. Actually, we've never been here in the history of this podcast with the Patriots in playoffs, which you remember that game at Buffalo, 47-17. Not one most people would like to remember. So we're instead going to go back 6-7 years, and the Patriots play at home, as they will against the Chargers Sunday night. And today, Friday, I am excited in a way that I can't remember what day it is, because we have a guest, Cody Alexander of MatchQuarters.com, that I've been looking forward to having for a long, long time here in this podcast. I just wanted to time it right. And lucky you listening, watching at home, he dropped a big article exactly on how the Chargers defense works, why it works, things to look for that we will dive into, as well as the Patriots defense versus the Chargers offense. But it's this time that I remind you the Pats Interference podcast is part of the nascent, neighborly, never going to let you down CLNS Media Network. Couple quick updates, because we're going to hear from Mike Vrabel shortly. He'll have the answers, but for now, these are the questions. Kayshon Boutte has a hamstring injury. Limited in practice Thursday. Don't know if this is the old one popping up. Could be a new one. Garrett Bradbury hasn't practiced for 2 straight days. Jared Wilson just lost in concussion protocol because he's been limited, still in a non-contact jersey. Will he play? We don't know, but stay tuned for those. Now we want to bring in Cody, who I just said, MatchQuarters.com. You've got, I want to put it this way, like a cool library of anything people want to know about defense, because you say library, and even though it's 2026 and everyone and everything is digital, you just think old dusty books. And what I think of is there's anything new that pops up, anything old. Do you want to go back to Belichick game plans and schemes? It's just there. So when I answered a mailbag question a couple of weeks ago, someone asked, what are some, materials to learn about coverage and defense? I say, Cody's got a couple of books, and Cameron Saran did a lot of Saban stuff, and those are good resources, yada, yada. I should have just said the website. So what am I missing here? Thank you for coming on, because you've got new stuff all the time. And again, that's part of the reason you're here.
Yeah, I've really been studying the defensive trends of really football for the last 10 years. Obviously, the early part focusing in on college, and then we had kind of the explosion of offenses and kind of that how the spread trickle up, in 2018, 2019. So I started slowly moving back over to the NFL. And so, yeah, if you want to know anything about defense and kind of where it's been headed for over the last 10 years, it's pretty much all on MatchQuarters.com.
Yeah, it's great. And you coached, you're in Texas, you coached at Baylor, you coached at the high school level. And so I want to start there though. Why defense? There's so many guys down there that you just I don't know, come out of the womb expecting 40 points, and it's just run and shoot. It's everything and spread and all that different stuff. Why defense for you?
Man, I tell people, I get asked this all the time, because it is true. It's nobody studies defense. You have to really be a glutton for punishment. And so I've tried my entire life. I tried to play receiver multiple times, get thrown back to the defensive side, and so I just finally just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to just study defense, because God keeps putting me on this side of the ball. I'm just going to keep doing it. I was like, I'm just going to quit fighting it. And so I just really started nailing down on just kind of, I was like, look, I was a history teacher for almost 10 years at the high school level as well as a coach. And I love history. And so for me, the historical context of football, where we're going, being able to know where we're going in the future by looking back into the past, because NFL, especially and really football in general, is very cyclical, very predictable. You just don't know when and where it's going to start, kind of the pendulum's going to start swinging back. And so I've just kind of shifted my focus from teaching history to teaching football, and it's primarily the defensive side.
That's awesome. So where are we going? I can't go on to the game unless I know where we're going for the next 5 years. It's a hell of a tease.
Well, so here's the deal. This has happened multiple times throughout the NFL, where you kind of get spread happy, and spread is a very loose term here, because the NFL really hasn't had spread concepts really until about 2017, when the Eagles winning that Super Bowl in 2017, essentially running a college style offense, kind of opened the pathway for a lot of these other coordinators to get into this. I mean, even some of the stuff that Shanahan McVay are doing that everybody is just kind of excited about. I mean, we could even talk about the Patriots in the back in the day were running 12 personnel empty, which is very, very under. So we've had look, we've been having spread eras, Tampa 2 era where everybody goes light. Dan Marino kind of made everybody want to pass, West Coast offense, all of that. But we've had these expansions and contractions. Here we are again having a contraction, both in the sense that everybody's going heavy personnel, but also in the sense that we're everybody's getting tighter with condensed sets. The NFL game is played in the middle of the field, so there really is no leverage advantage of playing on the hash like you see at the high school and the college level. Well, what that means, though, is that the spread ain't dead. Like the spread won, guys. I hate to tell you, the spread won. We don't give $50 to $60 million to quarterbacks to sit there and hand the ball off to a running back that's only making about $5 to $6 million. So we're going to pass the ball. And I think we see this really, the Rams and the Seahawks, I think in particular, getting in 12 and 13 personnel to throw the ball. That to me is like, that just basically tells you where we are.
Yeah. We're going to get to that because the Patriots have dabbled some, and I've talked about this before, and some of it's more of the jumbo stuff. They don't really get into traditional 13 because they just don't trust their third tight end. But there are overlapping reasons the Rams are doing that, and the Patriots are doing what we'll get to here in a second. The thing about this game is interesting, though, because you just have 2-star quarterbacks. And very often when that's the case, in my job, Cody, I want to dig deeper, sell something else. We all know who Justin Herbert is, who Drake Maye is, and what they can do. But then I come back around because then the second thing you hear is it's playoff football. You got to run the ball. You got to play defense. And like maybe that's true given what you just said and kind of where we're swinging back. But I don't want to do the cliche obvious stuff. Like you surely have something that interests you and kind of tickles your football brain, your history teacher brain. You're looking at this game and it's not Herbert, it's not May, it's not running, it's not cliche. What is it? What interests you most about this game?
This game to me, and I said it on my podcast, Let's Talk Ball, with my buddy Felix that I do it with, is like, this is basically the paper tiger game. And what I mean by that is that these teams have high wins, especially the Patriots. I mean, they're the number 2 seed. But when you look at them overall and you start digging into the numbers and analytically, there are some major issues with these teams. Like if you just look at raw data, the Patriots look awesome. But then if you start looking at overall efficiency, how they play over time, I'm not, and also too, I will say this, I am not a big believer in like strength of schedule. You play the games that you're given. To me, there's never an excuse for that. If you play a tougher schedule and you win games, great. If you the NFL, to me, at college, you can get away with like just getting like, hey, we don't play anybody, right? We give 3 patsies to 3 directional schools, and then we'll play our conference. Like I still, even then, like you have to play your conference. So when I look at this and the Patriots, like I want to steer clear of that. You win the games that you're in. And I think like, to me, the real emphasis in this game is going to be on first down. And I think you mentioned it, the quarterbacks, defense wins championships, and then everybody loves third down because everybody, like, again, it's the money down, right? But you can't get to that down and you can't win that down if you don't win first down, offensively and defensively. And I think in this game, where there is some really interesting matchups, I think are on these early downs. So where there are deficiencies and efficiencies, this is the down on early downs where I think that the Patriots can take advantage of some things. And then on the flip side, I think that the Chargers can take advantage of the Patriots. So when I look at this game, I want to focus on first down and not necessarily on third down or the passing game or the 2 quarterbacks and who's going to play hero ball the best.
Yeah, this reminds me of something I heard from a coach a couple years ago who was with the Patriots, who described it this way, like, and they were struggling. So this is why he said this. We can't dictate terms of engagement. You know what I mean? Like first quarter and first down is where the game tells you it's about to go, how it declares. And so what you're talking about here is, do the Chargers come in and do what the Chargers want to do, possess the ball, run it well enough? We'll see if Amari Hampton, who hasn't practiced, is going to play. But if not, Vidal's been a plenty good running back for them. But the point is, like, there's a clarity about their identity. And I wrote earlier this week with the Patriots, they're a little bit more malleable. Like they've got more weapons and they're not as injured. That's a starting point with any conversation about the Chargers. But the point is, they still fancy themselves, as Robert Spillane put it this week, the biggest, baddest team on the field. So if the Patriots are right about that identity, which again can take different forms or more different forms than the Chargers, they'll win. If they're wrong, that this physicality and ruggedness and they can dictate terms on first down, like you just said, and the Chargers do that instead, the Chargers are going to win this football game. So I think it's very telling. You ready to talk about the Chargers?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we do this rundown every week just to kind of catch people up. Chargers are 11-6. They are the number 7 seed, as you said. By DVOA, they are 17th overall, which I stare at that number for a while, Cody. And like to the point about strength of schedule, I've leaned more DVOA as the season has gone on than EPA, which is exceptionally valuable. And we don't have to do the false binary choice thing. But now I'm looking at 17th. Like, there's no way the Chargers are below average team, but that's what the number's telling me. Would include the situations and the opponent, not just more kind of game field situation stuff. Like strength of schedule is factored in here. Anyway, they're also 18th by weighted DVOA, which is okay. More recently, that matters. Where are you doing? They haven't moved much. The Patriots, you'll notice, are a much better team by weighted DVOA. Their recent performance than earlier in the season. Offensively, they're 21st. They're 10th in defense, 25th on special teams. We could do their last four. It doesn't really matter. They played at Denver, sat their guys. They lost a close one to Houston. Those are really what you want to see right now. Their defense, I said it at the top. You wrote about this kind of gamble that Jesse Minter, their defensive coordinator, getting a lot of head coaching looks after just 2 years at this job with the Chargers because of the job he's done. I read this and go, all right, there are a lot of teams that bet, hey, we're going to play too deep. We're going to deny a lot of X plays. That's what wins football games. We all understand the strong correlation. But there's more details in that post that you share about how they go back or about saying you're going to have to drive the ball against us. And over time, that's not going to work because we're too good to let you do that. What are those details?
Well, I'll go back to what happened against the Texans because that's really the last, quote unquote game that they played that they didn't sit anybody. One thing that they do not do is give up explosive plays. And I thought the Texans were able to take advantage. In fact, it's Friday. I dropped a video on it of like how the Texans got them in these calls. And then on the flip side, how Minter was able to then fix it because they really do want to play quarters coverage when you get into some of these 3 wide, 4 wide sets. And so the Texans were able to really get them in. One, they were able to get them in a coverage check and then motion away from it. Everybody is 6 yards away from the line of scrimmage because it was one of those where it was really quick. We tempoed it. It's early in the game. They're trying to communicate. They know exactly what the check is going to be. They motion back. So they went basically with a 4x1 motion to 2x2. And then they hit them on a deep, basically just outran the corner to the post. You get the next drive. And what they used was like Nico Collins, really run like a deep sit down route. They get him to suck down and do the same thing again. They attack the middle of the field on a deep post route. They were able to do this. This is something the Chargers never do because the way that this defense is designed is, yes, they are going to give up some run game. And that's probably why they're not 5th best, they're 10th best, because that efficiency metric really, if you can consistently get 4.5 yards, 5 yards. But I'll tell you this, I talked to an NFL coach a couple years ago, kind of when this, everything, the offenses are blowing up and we're trying to see this meta shift now. But he even said, like, look, in the NFL, a 4-down run, we're not afraid of because even on a first down, that means it's 2nd and 6. You're probably going to throw the ball. We can play defense. We can kind of dictate the terms. And also with running, like eventually you're going to either get a holding call, you're going to get a stuff, you could fumble the ball. There's a lot of things that can go down. And really there's like an adage of you throw to score, you run to win. And so I think like people understand that and people are trying to score. And if you can't score, you get down, you have to start passing. And so I go back to the Texans game. They were able to fix those problems. I think this is also a defense that is there must be something in the water in LA because they love dime personnel. And so the Rams play it at almost a third of their snaps. And then you have the Chargers that play it at almost 20% of their snaps. And yes, a lot of this has to do with personnel. They have a guy named Derwin James who's an absolute alien. A lot of people talk about Kyle Hamilton. Derwin James is about as good and is about as freaky of an athlete as well. And so what they essentially do is like they accept like the run tax. We know we're going to give this up, but you are not going to be able to get any explosives. So even in your passing game, we're going to turn those into runs, which means you're basically not going to throw past 5 yards. And if you go back and you look at that game with Stroud, if you take those 2 touchdowns away, he did not complete another pass past, I think, like 12 yards. So what they do is like modern, how do you defend the spread, is that we don't give you space. we're going to compress the field, and you're not going to get any kind of an explosion. And I think that is what they do. And I think the other part of that is that they use a lot of smoke and mirrors, which is they're high in simulated pressure. So they will drop a guy out, which is a fancy word of saying like a replacement pressure. So we're going to bring someone from one side, we're going to drop somebody from the other. They're not going to give up anything in the coverage distribution. So they're going to try and keep 7 in coverage at all the times. And so to me, that is really what they are. And that's why I called that article the gamble, because that's what he's really doing right now is as teams are shifting to more 12 and 13 personnel, 21 personnel, these heavier sets, they're saying, look, we have an alien at nickel. We really feel like we can leverage that. We feel like we have good interior line play. We feel like both of our defensive ends are solid against the run. So we may give up a little bit, but you are not going to get that explosive passing game, and you're not going to get us. I think of it like wrestling. Like I have an 8-year-old. He's just starting out wrestling, and he learned last night. He was wrestling somebody that he was much better than, but he made a mistake and he exposed himself, got pinned by a kid that he should never get pinned by. And that was like the same thing, like with the Chargers, is that they're that wrestler that you can that always falls on his belly. You're never going to be able to get him on his back. He's not going to make any mistakes. He's not going to put himself in a situation where he's going to get exposed. And that to me is really where you look at the Chargers. They just are I call it a mitigating defense. They just are not, they're risk averse.
Yeah, and you have to knock them out, which is the term that I think you could use to describe a lot of Jim Harbaugh teams, but it more often pertains to, their offense, and that you have to have a draw at the line of scrimmage, right? You can't get knocked off the ball, and that you force the game upon their quarterback. The interesting part, of course, now with Justin Herbert is that that's a dangerous place to be, and yet somewhere you still want to be understanding how they want to play. But sticking with this, speaking very broadly, because you brought up a lot of good information there and explanation of how they want to play personnel wise. They're reluctant to play base in a way that I think the Patriots are going to test and probe, given how much they played with 6 offensive linemen, because it's cool, Derwin James is an alien. He's not a 260-pound alien, and that is something that they want to test. But before we get there, the Patriots have the highest success rate of any passing offense in the league, meaning that I've talked about this. Drake Maye has a temptation that all 23-year-olds with a bazooka arm have. I want to go deep. I want to show this off. He's resisted that temptation all year. Josh McDaniels knows how to live within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Is this going to be effective, this kind of gamble against an offense that I think has worked itself to a point of maturity to say, we get our explosive plays, don't get us wrong, but if we have to play this game, we can do that too?
I think that's the superpower in modern football. I go back to the Carolina Panthers playing the Packers. How could they have beaten the Packers, right? The Packers were rolling. They looked really good. Jordan Love, it looked like the best offense in the NFL, right? Well, everybody knows if you just play coverage, Jordan Love's going to throw you the ball because he gets impatient. He wants to throw the ball deep, and he does. He'll just throw it to the defense. And I think that's the superpower for May. And I think that's the difference when you look at this, because it's the same thing like talking about another young quarterback like Bo Nix. Okay, well, he may not throw the deep ball all the time. Okay, well, that's great. Patrick Mahomes too. He's washed, right? It's Patrick Mahomes. You can't throw the ball deep anymore. Okay, well, that's how defenses are playing them. Josh Allen is getting the same kind of things that, sticking in the area. It's okay, well, they don't have a deep ball threat. Okay, well, they're still winning games. Why? Because they're taking what the defense is giving them, and they're not exposing themselves. It's basically what you're talking about is the same philosophy offensively as what the Chargers have defensively. It's look, if you play a light box, we're going to run the ball. If you pack the box, we're going to throw the ball. But we're not going to – and when we get a one-on-one matchup, that's when we're then going to throw it. But
Bingo.
We're not going to then force the issue. The moment that you start forcing the issue, that's when you get into trouble. And so, that's why I think a lot of – people that really study the quarterback position really like Drake Maye, because it's okay, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's doing it at an elite level. And then obviously the completion rate, you want to make sure that that's high as well, because when you play these zone defenses, you have to be able to throw into these windows. And that to me, you kind of put it there, is that these are essentially two philosophies that believe in the same thing, and they're about to go smash into each other.
Yeah, and that's the cool part is okay, you want to dare us to do this. Dare accepted. Challenge accepted. But how that gets there in the first quarter, to our original point of how do you dictate terms first down and first quarter, I don't think is going to have a whole lot to do with Drake Maye, because when you look at the Chargers run defense, most metrics are going to tell you it's pretty good. And it is. That's exactly why. And the Patriots players I've spoken with this week go, look, their edges are a problem. Like those are the guys we're chiefly concerned about. Obviously, from a passer standpoint, though, Khalil Mack is not the Khalil Mack you remember, but they've got depth there, always there. It's the thing is, though, they're about average in terms of success rate allowed to opponents who do run the ball. So there's a patience here that I think the Patriots can bank on with running the ball and enough success that is even maybe a little bit more than the Chargers want. But what's really going to push their buttons if this does work is when the Patriots go 6 offensive linemen. Because I talked about this on Monday. They're doing this now at a rate that is not just, it's a game plan wrinkle week to week. We kind of figure out what we want to do. They do this 25% of the time. They're good at it, averaging 8.7 yards per carry over that stretch. And they've only tapped into the play action stuff. So how often McDaniels, who I think will go to this early, to say, yeah, we're going to bulk up, we're going to run. We're not getting 4. We're going for 5 or 6 here. And then when you come down into the box, we'll do exactly what you just said. We're going to go over the top and hit you over play action. Where are you there, both with the 6 offensive lineman piece and what the Patriots have been up to, which is their version of the 12-13 stuff we were talking about earlier with the Rams and the Seahawks, and then play action, where the Chargers, set the running numbers aside, are actually bottom 10 in the league by a lot of metrics lately against play action.
Yeah, I think this is the battleground. Like this to me, you hit the nail on the head. Like this is going to be the battleground of it's the classic game of chicken. Or I'm going to stall. It's like, no, you go first. No, you go first. You go, like, it's like, no. So it's who can wait it out the most. And then who can decide, like, we're going to live in this. And I think like, it's really interesting. This game may take 2 hours to play because if this is really the way that the Chargers have flipped. Now, if you remember the beginning of the year, the Chargers were passing the ball at a rate that everybody's like, what is this, a Big 12 team? Like, what are we doing? Like,
who kidnapped Greg Roman and who put, who was calling plays?
Greg Roman went back to college and he learned how to throw the ball, right? Like everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? But then obviously injuries, they realize, okay, we got to go back to the bully ball mentality. I think that's the way, if you go and you really look at the Patriots, when it got like, hey, this is a must-have it game. We got to win this game. We got to do this. What do they get? Hey, let's make this game ugly. I think this game is going to be an old school knockdown drag out. And I really agree with you that this in particular, if 25% of your snaps are going to be with 6 offensive linemen, you're daring the Chargers to get away from what they are. You're making them left-handed on defense, which is playing base, playing with 3 linebackers, pulling Derwin James back in there, getting into more single high coverages. To me, that's going to be the key. This is not a team that I see is going to flip the switch and get into a bunch of 6-1 and play and keep their quarters on the back end to kind of create that layering. Basically what the Patriots did to Sean McVay in the Super Bowl. Like, I don't see them coming out with that defense. I think they're going to try and wait it out, see if they can survive. And that if the Patriots are successful and can get them to really get left-handed and essentially get into base defense, then I think that you're going to see the Patriots be successful.
Yeah, and the Chargers' numbers are still good in base defense. You're talking about playing with 4 defensive backs, but it's not where they want to live. Like, there's a reason they're over 80% in every other personnel grouping combined relative to base defense. That's where they want to live. That's their personnel groupings. Inevitably, though, they will get to third down. And this is where we heard from Josh McDaniels yesterday, and he had mentioned that they make it as complicated as anyone does. And you hit on this with some of the sim pressure stuff, meaning, again, for people who are unfamiliar, this is the presentation of a blitz. Then you'll have a defender in the line of scrimmage drop off, replaced by a rusher, a linebacker, safety, corner coming in from a different place. So the number of rushers is still 4. But the way that you get to this, in addition to the feigning of pressure up front, is different. Creepers are adjacent in a way that you don't show pressure, but you still bring forward that combination of one guy drops out and somebody else comes in. And McDaniel said something that caught my attention, which was, the complexity point, but also like they know your rules and really stress them and try to break them. And that interests me here because Maye is going to have to sift through coverage in a way he's done a pretty good job this year. But this is not, they spun a safety down at the last second. I thought we were dealing with split safety. Now it's post safety. This is going to be, how did he rush from over there? And I'm really curious how the Chargers approach this defensively. And part of me just wants to ask you, how would you treat Drake Maye on third down? Because I've advocated for man coverage, understanding the scrambling threat, which they've done a little bit more lately. It's about 40% over the last 2 months, according to The Athletic. But again, talk about worlds they don't want to live in. That's not who they are. So what do you expect on third down, and what would you do?
Yeah, so I think if it's a short yardage, what they love to do is we'll go short to long. I think in short yardage, what they really love to do is basically max fit everything. They're just going to send. That's when you really see the aggression. This is the 5-man pressure, 6-man pressure. They're really trying to clog every gap. They're going to play man coverage on the back end. Really play extra tight and really load up in the box to the run. I think as you go down, like the medium downs, like you said, they're really a 60-40 split man versus zone. And so that is where the complications come in. So that's where you get, I don't really know what we're going to get, because I don't know if we're going to get some sort of a cover 2. Are we going to get cover 3 here? Are we going to get man coverage? And I can't really tell when and where they're going to do it, because that's the other part of this split is that, yes, they're running man coverage, but that 60% could be cover 3, could be cover 2, could be quarters, could be anything else. So what you get is a lot of diversity within this. And so even in their cover 1, they're going to have somebody where they're dropping into, whether it's the intermediate for a crossing route, it's low for some sort of a shallow. They're going to have what's called a rat, which is basically a backstop. Think of it as a backstop. So if something goes through the middle of the field, they're going to have somebody on the other side that's sitting there waiting to collect it. And so that's really where Maye is going to have to work and this is why we've had the argument now for almost like 2 months about pure progression versus split field reads and all this stuff. Like it's kind of like, look, that's the offensive version of run fits. It's religion and politics. And like, why are we arguing about things that you're never going to change people's minds? But
yeah, this is a typical Twitter, right? Like This could be a very neat football conversation of, would you rather go with the traditional progression, you need first 1 to 2 to 3, regardless of what's going on, or the McDaniels approach of like, we're going to look for all of the clues. This could change post snap. You're going to have to read it the same as the receiver. And the defense is going to dictate where we go, which in theory, it's great if you're right. And that's where the reading comes in for Maye here. But anyway, I interrupted. Go on.
No, but that's kind of where it looks like, okay, I think we could take advantage of this, but it's not. This isn't one of those deals where, oh, we know it's 80% zone and most of that split field, or hey, this is they just lock it up like a lot of teams. Like, hey, they're just going to run cover 1 here. It's third and 6. We know that they're just going to run cover 1. So now we got all our 1 beaters, or like the Seahawks did to the 49ers, we're going to run on 3rd down. And so you can see like that is a deal. I do think too with the scrambling ability, it really changes you. And if you don't understand why is cover 1 bad against scrambling quarterbacks, your quarterback player in cover 1 is the post safety. So you are actually at a numbers disadvantage and this is against design quarterback runs, but then the scramble aspect of this too is everybody's got their back to the quarterback. Nobody can see him take off. So if you aren't good with your rush integrity, then you're going to get into some trouble. I think this is where, like, why is Minter always paired with McDonald, is because they come from the same scheme and they kind of have the same kind of philosophy and mentality towards defense. They want to be really structurally sound in the front, which means run fits and the rush lanes. We're just creating a vice on the quarterback. So we can do some of these other things to do that. But yeah, if you go down max blitz early or on these short yardages, you're going to get just kind of a random mix. It seems random, but it's not. Random mix of coverages, what makes it really hard. And then as you go further down, like the 3rd and long stuff, that's where we get the Tampa 2 drops. Really what's going to happen is they just want you to throw it to the running back. We're a really good tackling team. We'll vice the running back. You get 5 yards. It's now 4th and 5, and you're punting back to us.
Yeah. I want to run down some stuff that we kind of skipped over, because the big picture scheme battle is fascinating, and we just covered a lot of this, but it will probably come down to a missed tackle or a tackle made that the Patriots were not counting on. And the reason I bring this up is because they now finally have players, Cody, and the first time it feels like my lifetime, when like he's gone speed, 4-3 and see you later. And that's Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams. They're 2nd and 3rd round rookies. Kyle Williams, if Kayshon Boutte cannot play, is going to play a much bigger role in this game, because I think what Boutte's absence will allow the Chargers to do is a little bit more confidently send doubles or run 1 cross, to your point about guys hanging over the middle, saying, okay, Diggs is going to come over in a deep over, it's a dig, or it's a shallow, or whatever. We'll pick that up, if not just outright double him, because we know that's where Maye wants to go in critical situations. What does Maye do then outside of throwing to Stephon Diggs? he's given his guys chances down the field because it's really paid off for him because of how good his touch is deep. But Kayshon Boutte caught 10 of 14 of his deep targets this year. Kyle Williams, whatever you think of him, and he's had some really good looks downfield, tracks the ball exceptionally well, didn't catch 10 to 14. And there's no way you can have that same confidence in a guy just based on the opportunities. So what happens when Maye goes there? Hunter Henry's another option. We're down the middle. I think they love the work, and maybe Derwin sees more of his old teammate. But there are matchups there, and I skipped over Henderson, who, by the way, I think they're going to try to target. We saw them go empty and run double moves, Ramondre Stevenson. This will become more matchup ball, I think, if Boutte doesn't play, because the Chargers are going to feel more confident in their matchups, I think, one-on-one or ability to send help towards Diggs. And Maye is just going to have to make those throws while counting on some players who aren't as often targeted, I think, in high leverage situations. So make of that what you will. Pick something else, or what did I miss before we kind of move on to the Chargers offense and Patriots defense?
Yeah, so let's talk really quickly about doubling the receiver. It's not you can run some one double. Probably the only time you're going to see one double is if they really think, or what you'll end up getting is really more of a robber scheme, meaning that the safety is going to drop down weak or away from Diggs when they really feel like they're going to get some sort of a crossing route, whether that be on third down, they think they're going to get some scheme like that. I think what more or less is going to happen, and this is built within this, and this is kind of that Fangio scheme of being able to rotate your split field coverages, your cover two and your quarters, and being able to either get a zone double, which is the cover two side, or a backstop, which is your quarter side, and understanding where we can get this, but we're still playing our zone principles. So we still have eyes on the ball. We still have that. So again, it's going to, you really have hit it. That it's going to come down to Maye seeing what the coverage is. Are they doubling Diggs? If they are, however they're doing it, whether it's through some sort of man robber scheme or whether it's through just zone, where then is the next guy? Where's the space? Where's the matchup that we can take advantage of? And that's going to be it, especially in that intermediate. And I think what this defense, because it's very similar in style and structure as Seattle. Seattle's the number one team in intermediate passing. They literally just compress the field. And you have to throw everything outside and deep, which is low percentage. And I think that, to me, why are the Houston Texans so good is because they run a lot of quarters, they run a lot of cover two, and they want you to go outside and deep, and those are low percentage throws. The Chargers are built in the same cloth. That's why, again, their passing defense, though outside of Derwin James, you're kind of looking at that secondary and it's like, okay, not really a star power, but they do everything technically sound. They make sure nobody is out of where they're supposed to be, and they really constrain that space, which, again, modern defense is about constraining space. Modern offense is about creating space. So that kind of cat and mouse game, like you said, Maye's going to have to throw darts. He's going to have to make sure I see the double really quickly, or I see the concept of what they're trying to do, and then we can then pivot off of that and find somebody, and then the receiver's got to catch the ball.
Yeah. And who knows, that might mean Austin Hooper down the seam, right? Like, especially if they're going to play, some 3 week or whatever it might be, because then there go the seams, and he's had a couple of catches down there. So it's like a lot of playoff games where we can talk about all the bigger players, and then there's, so-and-so came out of the blue, or like Thayer Munford, there's 6 offensive linemen who also didn't practice yesterday, I should have mentioned, but in these jumbo sets, they haven't really thrown to the big guys yet. And I have to think that's coming as this kind of long con of the season, which it's not like Jesse Minter would be caught by surprise. Oh my God, Josh McDaniel threw to an offensive lineman. But you haven't done it yet. Right. So that might be in store here. And the last thing I'll say is this, again, it's as much, if they can run the ball without, forget the 6 offensive linemen, if they can just run the ball the way that they have been, because Ramondre Stevenson deserves a little bit more conversation here. Again, dictating terms in the simplest ways is going to give them control over the rest of the game. I don't think that's going to happen, but just the way that he's been playing has to be noted, because it's not just the 4, 5, 6 yards of carry, though they got that last weekend. It's the explosives. How they get there is a different story, but there's enough here where they can go around, and the game of chicken, the way that you put it, like the further we dive, there's just more games and more chickens that we keep finding, because, it's okay. Go ahead and run with Ramondre, or go ahead, throw this slot fade to Diggs or whomever, or Kyle Williams. Like, Maye can make that ball, and they'll be happy to do it, and the Chargers will be happy to sit back and I don't know. We'll see. I don't think I heard from you though how you would just really quickly, you get a whole week or a month or whatever, 2 weeks to draw up a game plan for Drake Maye. Like there's no great answer. We're at a pick your poison stage with him. But what would be your answer?
Well, I think with young quarterbacks in pressure situations, you make them play quarterback. I think that's really what this is. And I think the best thing for the Chargers to do is to not change. Be who you are. Don't try and get cute. I think a lot of teams and I think a lot of fans are like, okay, these guys are going to get cute. They've self-scouted. They're going to completely change it up. And look, there are instances where we've shown one thing, but we're going to do it completely different. Those to me that's the ace in your pocket, right? Like that's what I'm going to, hey, I have a gotta have it. We've done this exactly in the situation. This game is tight. I need a big play here. I'm going to pull that card out. That's not something that you come in and you see a whole game plan of like, well, we thought they were going to do this, and then they did basically the opposite thing of that. That very rarely happens. I really think with Maye is prove to me that you were the player that you were through the regular season. Now when everything is ramped up, because it's kind of like in hockey, if you've ever watched playoff hockey versus regular season hockey, it's a completely different game. It's the same thing again in the NFL. It's a different game. It's a lot tighter. Everybody's playing fast. Nobody really cares if they get hurt or not. So it's like you are selling out. And I think like for me, that's where the Chargers need to do. They need to, maybe they play a little bit more base as the changeup of saying, oh, you thought we were going to go light. We ended up not. Now we're in base. Maybe we jump into some different structures. Maybe we get a little bit more into a 3-4 look instead of a 4-3 look, doing different things. But to me, that's schematic fluidity. They can run those things regardless of what personnel package they are in. And so to me, I think like that would be, I always think the path of least resistance, usually the simplest answer is the best answer. That to me is it. Don't change, but maybe change up personnel packages, different people on the field to kind of mitigate some of the issues that you're going to have as we get the 6 offensive linemen or as the Patriots try and run the ball on early downs.
I hear you. Yeah. And I look, as a kid and honestly, a young reporter who was obsessed with those changeups, like there's me sitting here doing a podcast, writing an article about like, oh, they haven't done this. And if you do more of that, you'll catch them off guard and it could lead to a turnover. The guys on the field have to do it. You know what I mean? And then if it busts and you have a miscommunication, not because, as you gave an example, the Texans broke your rules or understand what you're going to check to versus 4x1, you motion to 2x2, you just blew it. How are you going to feel after that? Not great. So I get that piece. All right, let's go on to the Chargers offense versus the Patriots defense. And this is a battle that, look, if you are the Patriots, or you're a Patriots fan, I should say, you feel more confident than, frankly, I do, that they will blow them out. They'll handle this. You have more belief in the Patriots defense that could flip this game into a blowout than I do. And we'll get to why they could do that here in a second. But first, it's been a while on this podcast. We haven't mentioned Prizepicks, though we mention it every week because they sponsor this podcast and then they do a great job. Prizepicks is giving you a lot of offers over this season, but I will tell you, you will not find a better one than you have this weekend, where regardless of what the Patriots do, win or lose, you can win. Because Prizepicks asks you to, oh, hey, you come, you visit, you build a lineup, 2 to 6 players, you pick a stat, you go more than, less than. If you think Caleb Williams is going to throw for more than 1 yard, I am going to compel you, urge you, tell you, go to Prizepicks because that's available. Caleb Williams, more than 1 passing yard, is a square you can lock into your lineup over at Prizepicks. Then you pick 1 player and 1 stat, you go more than, less than, and that's it. And we're going to give you a lineup here at the end of this ad read. But before we get to that, I have to remind you, too, they have a new feature where if you're new to this and you're unsure, because, look, watching sports is fun. Watching sports and winning money is doubly fun, but it's a little scary. There are early payouts where if you build a 3-player lineup, Caleb Williams and a Patriot and a Charger, whatever, if the first 2 hit, you can cash out at Prizepicks right now. And if you have not started at Prizepicks, here's the best deal. In addition to the early payouts, in addition to everything that we just covered, if you download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS, you get $50, 50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, including Caleb Williams, more than 1 passing yard. Prizepicks, it's good to be right. I only have one other pick there because everyone should take the free one. That's the freebie. This is the big oak square in the middle of your card. I think Justin Herbert's going to run around here because he's just going to have to, and they have him around 28 yards. I'm going to go more than, and look, there's always pick your favorite Patriots offensive player. I'd go Hunter Henry more than receiving yards is another safe bet. What do you make of Justin Herbert scrambling before we talk about how good and great he's been despite having like 1.5 hands functionally?
No, that's going to be a huge deal in this game. And in fact, that's kind of what has powered this offense, is really his ability to, when nobody's open, to then run the ball. I think people forget how athletic he actually is. And he's really kind of displayed that this year as he's had to kind of run around the pocket and then run down the field.
Yeah. Herbert, invites the best and the worst discourse I think we have in football, right? Like if you turned into First Take, which you never have to. We don't have to listen to Cam Newton say things about other quarterbacks because they're increasingly unreasonable. But setting Cam Newton aside, the conversation is about playoff loser or choker, this and that. And it was bad against the Texans last year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not particularly interested, though, Cody, in a 2-game sample to just label what a quarterback is or isn't. I'd rather take the longer look. In the longer look and the deeper numbers and the underlying stuff would tell you Justin Herbert's freaking awesome and a real threat to the Patriots if he protects the football, creates, as you and I just agreed, is going to happen with the scrambling and the rushing yards, and hit a couple of throws that you just go, man, what the hell are we supposed to do with that? And people, as we all focus on the offensive line in front of him that has kept him from being even better this year, you look at the receivers, and I think there's an underrated aspect here because of the way they can spread the ball around. But they're all playing that well because he knows where to go with the ball. Am I right? Or what are we missing about Justin Herbert, who I think is totally fairly a top 6 quarterback at worst every single year, but doesn't get treated as such?
It's the QB wins debate every year. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have to deal with this as well. Like, what happens if Trevor Lawrence goes and lays an egg against the Bills? Everybody's like, well, told you. There you go. We told you that Trevor Lawrence is terrible. Liam Cohen can't, polish that. I think Herbert's in the same boat. Every quarterback has had to deal with this at some point early in their careers. Like, if you don't win and you can do whatever you want. I'm in Dallas, so I hear about Dak. You can't have a football show without Dak legacy. So we officially made this a football show for you.
Thank you for christening the show. Yes,
I'm just letting you know. Okay, we officially made it.
You could audition for an ESPN producer on First Take, where like it is July and nothing is happening, and Dak's legacy is somehow on the line yet again. So very
right. Yeah. But he's a great example of it too. Can't win a playoff game, right? So everybody thinks that you either think he's a bum or you think he's really good, and I think that that's just kind of where we are. But here's the thing: if Justin Herbert is not playing quarterback, this is a bottom 10 team in the NFL. Period. End of story. It's not even close. Give them some of these other quarterbacks that are around there. This is not going to be a very good season for the Chargers. I think he's been able to will them to this. They've had to pivot back to running the ball, not because of Justin Herbert's production. It was because of the injuries to the tackles. Go look at their early work. This was one of the best passing offenses. Yes, Quentin Johnson was actually catching passes. Ladd McConkey looked like he was going to have another 1,000 yards. I mean, even Keenan Allen, the old man Keenan Allen, is basically a tight end out there running routes. He was having a lot of production. So I think, like, you look at that, look at the early work, don't look at the late work, and then look at the big picture overall. I think Herbert is one of the better, and he is kind of been a Josh Allen of like, or a Patrick Mahomes of where I'm just going to Superman this thing. I'm going to get us over the hump every single week, and they're really winning because of him and not winning in spite of him.
Yeah, and look, he's thrown, I think, 13 interceptions, but you talk about the deeper numbers, tell a different story with him. And it's not because Justin Herbert's mom has paid off the deeper numbers. They just are what they are, and they look good. He is the 4th lowest turnover-worthy play percentage, something I said last week, but I think just deserves repeating. This is not, as you said, Jordan Love, we play enough quarters, we play enough cover 2. He's just going to throw it to us. Justin Herbert's going to make the right play. And that's a hard guy who has been hit 129 times to unsettle, either with physical pressure, disguise, or just game situation, because it's just not going to happen. Like, he'll make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but it's not been because he was suddenly hurried. That would have happened already. He's been physically broken and is still here powering this team, a below average team, according to the DVOA, 2-11-6 record in the playoffs. So I just think he deserves more respect than he's getting. All of which is to set up another 1 touchdown, 4 pick game from him on Sunday, because that's how things go in the podcast space. I want to talk about the receivers first before we get to the run game, where, again, I do think first down, first quarter, it's going to be who can dictate terms of engagement. But the receivers, Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey's come back down to earth a little bit, and Quentin Johnston, they're all over 700 yards. This is a balanced passing attack. Rondé Gadsden's over 600 as their tight end. The Patriots are going to have a matchup they don't feel great about in obvious passing situations. What are you doing if you're them, understanding that this is not a super complex defense as some of the numbers you showed, but they will move Christian Gonzalez around on third down? What do you think they'll do, and what do you think they should do?
Well, I think you take Keenan Allen out of it. He gets 25% of their target share. That's a quarter of their targets. I think he's that's who his safety blanket is. If you're going to follow a guy, you do that. They may not start if they really think that they'll tell you what they think about the passing game, I think, from the very beginning of the game. So if they come out, the Patriots are like, we're just going to play defense. We're going to put Christian Gonzalez into the boundary or away from the passing strength. And then we're just going to play defense. Then I think they feel like they can win that and they can win up front. And they're just kind of not going to worry about it. If he's going to get his catches, he's 25 target share. He's going to get a lot of those catches. That's fine, whatever. I think if they follow him, then they're really into like, hey, we're going to make you left-handed. We're going to make you throw to Ladd McConkey in the intermediate. We're going to make Quentin Johnson attempt to catch the ball. I think that's the other thing with like Johnson is like everybody wants him to be really good, but his like, if you go and look at some of the advanced analytics, it tells you he is just not a very good receiver. He doesn't get a lot of separation. He's big and tall. If you allow him to play basketball, he will come down with the rebound. But if in terms of just like an explosive receiver, getting separation, finding the space, he's just not that. I think a lot of the problems at tackle have affected Ladd McConkey's numbers because, again, these are a lot of crossing routes. He's he's your traditional slot receiver. So I'm scrambling opposite the way that you were going. You're not going to get the ball as much. So I think there's been times with that. And so I think if you look at receiver wise, I think that Christian Gonzalez, if you're going to shadow a receiver, it's hard to do a slot. So Ladd McConkey's really not, you're not going to shadow a slot. It's a lot easier to then shadow a guy like a Keenan Allen and just put somebody on top of him because he's not necessarily going to run crossing routes. That's the other misnomer too. Like if you're like, why don't they just lock him on him? Well, that's great. But then it doesn't make sense a lot of times. Like if they always run the guy away, you don't want to play man coverage. Like if I'm playing the Rams, Puka Nacua, well, half the time he's running an opposite field. I don't want to turn it into a track meet. I don't want to do that. So I think with Keenan Allen, a lot of digs, a lot of, comebacks, a lot of these vertical stem routes. Hey, we'll just set you to your side, whether we play zone or man, it really doesn't matter. We'll have that shadow. So I think if there's one guy, you got to follow Keenan Allen.
Yeah. And of course, they got to get there, which if the Chargers have their way, they won't even get to third down. And when they do get to third down, it'll be 3rd and 1. And the Patriots have been more willing to play more base lately, even as they run low on defensive tackles. And Milton Williams will be back. Robert Spillane will be back. Based on Kairos Tonga's lack of availability in practice the last 3 weeks, I don't think is going to play. But I think they're going to feel confident and say, okay, we'll bulk up with you and we'll trust our matchups in the back end. Because we feel good about our corners, and that is a starting point here. Tight ends have been an issue from time to time. I still don't know what to expect from this run defense, and it's partly because I really respect and trust Greg Roman as a run designer. And Vrabel detailed this and voiced this earlier in the week, saying, "Yeah, they're going to look at what you struggle with, and they're going to do that because they've got everything in the menu, but they're also going to stay true to what they do." It's another issue when you have the worst run blocking offensive line in the league by run block win rate, and pick whatever metric you want. It's not good. So whether they're last or 10th the worst, it doesn't matter. I still just it might be the first 2 drives and Patriots settle in. I think run defense. Cody, this is probably the best way I could put it. I think they'll give up a score as they have been wont to do in the first couple of drives. And the run defense will not look good. I think it will settle in though, and water will kind of find its level here just based on talent. But as we've talked about, if you dictate terms as the Chargers up 10-0, 7-0 early, who cares if you run it like a neutral efficacy and rate the rest of the way? You've kind of done your job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's really what Texans did, right? They hit the 2 quick daggers early. They were able to settle back in, just play base defense, get out of there with the victory because they knew that the Chargers were not going to be able to pass to be able to come back into it. So I think to your point, if there is some signal here for the Chargers offense, it's the stunt rates by the Patriots. So the Patriots like to move the front a lot, whether it's on a base down or third down. They like to move their front a lot. They don't do a lot of different, like the Patriots have one of the least diverse schemes in terms of blitz design, coverage distribution, and then personnel usage, they're in the bottom 5. So when you look at that, what do? They really like to stunt the front, move the front. Well, what does decent against that in the NFL is some gap schemes. And so what I think that you're going to see is them load up, try and pull some guys, try and figure out where you're trying to shift your guys, and then we're going to run the opposite, create an extra gap on the other side. Now, the argument to that also is that, well, we're moving and we can get penetration and we can tackle you. And so that's the other thing. You mentioned it. The pass blocking is not good. You look at the stuff rate. So a stuff rate is any 0 to negative run rate. Both of the backs that the Chargers have are at 25%. So 1 of every 4 is getting stuffed for 0 or negative yards. That's not good winning. That's not winning football. So it's
that's
kind
really
of
bad. I think we have to sit and think. You got a lot of numbers, and I do too. And like, that's just 1 out of every 4. Just don't bother. This is like, just spike the ball.
Right, exactly. So I think like if they're able to kind of use those stunts against them, or if they're able to win some of these, like you said, some of the injuries up front with the Patriots, if they're able to kind of mitigate that and kind of keep on track on early downs, it will go back to the beginning of the show. That's the matchup in this, is on both sides of the ball, is who can win the early down matchups. And for the Chargers, if there is one signal, it's we need to probably get heavy. We need to pull some linemen, and we need to try and use that movement against the Patriots.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, Herbert obviously sat last week. He'll be healthier. So there is a case where if they wanted to go pass happy early and just kind of test you and dictate terms that way, you could see it. Again, they've shown a willingness to do this. But I do think you never stray that far from your identity in the playoffs, and that is what they want to do. Are there any players defensively for the Patriots? Like, we all talk about Christian Gonzalez, and I've talked too much about K'Lavon Chaisson that, some people in my life have sat me down and said, can we just calm down here? Like, he's very good. Kidding. But who do you like on the Patriots defense that could play a bigger role here on Sunday?
Well, I really do think having Robert Spillane is just a massive upgrade just overall. I cannot believe that the Raiders let him walk. And then I thought he was one of the better free agent pickups in the offseason, just because he is your true Mike. Like, he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to be a tackling machine. He's going to make sure that everybody gets lined up. And so to me, he has really been somebody that I like, and I when I watch this defense, is that he's a good, solid player. And I think at the second level, those are really, really rare, and he's one of those. I think another person that I love is Barmore. He's obviously one of the best interior defensive linemen when he's healthy and when he's playing. And I think when you're thick through the middle and you have a good middle part of your defense, you end up being a solid defense. So Milton Williams being able to be in there, Barmore having him, then you stack Spillane behind him. That becomes a really, really tough defense to get anything moving forward, because you can't go vertically. Everything has to go horizontally. And then that's when kind of the speed of the defense comes into play in the back end.
Yeah. You mentioned Barmore. These are where the underlying metrics I kind of separate from, because in watching his tape, I do see some of the pressure numbers. Next Gen Stats, Pro Football Focus will tell you, but it's just kind of a softer pressure, and that there's not a lot of contact with the quarterback, either with sacks or after the fact with a quarterback hit. And that's the stuff where when you wait it out, it's not as, effective as those numbers would indicate between him and Milton Williams. He's still a very good player, don't get me wrong, but there's still, I don't know if the Patriots should or would trust themselves to line up. We're just going to rush for. We're going to get home because of how bad this Chargers offensive line is. They've been on 7 left tackles. Bobby Hart, like, God bless, does his best. And they've got other guys who are trying. But if it doesn't get home, that's a real problem. And I'm curious, aside from all the stunting that they do, what might be the levers that they pull to boost this pass rush, which again should be an area where they have an advantage because of Barmore, because of Milton Williams, K'Lavon Chaisson, and Harold Landry is going to come back. And I think that's a really underrated add for them after 2 weeks of rest. But even still, their numbers together haven't been overwhelming this year. What are the other levers that they could do to kind of help that pass rush?
Yeah, I think the one thing that they're going to have to figure out is how can we overload those tackles? So whether it's some sort of a slot blitz or we're going to blitz the corner, we're going to do something off the edge to where you get condensed, we're going to blitz. I think that would be, if you're looking for a changeup, that would be something where how can we overload those tackles to where we're getting a 2-for-1, we're manufacturing pressure and getting to the quarterback without necessarily selling out on I don't think your blitz numbers need to go up, but you're more of a stunting team than a blitzing team. Maybe that can be a curveball that you throw where, hey, we're going to blitz the nickel a little bit more. We're going to do some different things off the edge to really attack those tackles and really chase down the back through some of these runs. Because again, if you're running gap scheme, you're running some of these more like downhill schemes, a lot of times those corners and a lot of times those secondary players are not necessarily in the blocking, and you're able to kind of compress that off of that. So that would be something that you could add in. Or, hey, what's schematically that we could do? Start pressuring off the edge a little bit more instead of necessarily through the middle.
Yeah, I like it. I've always been a fan of nickel pressure versus mobile quarterbacks. Like if I'm going to I want to meet speed with speed. And sometimes it's in pressure, sometimes outright blitz, whatever. But I just think that's always a good idea. And Marcus Jones had a piggyback sack, is what I called it. Quinn Ewers just hopped on and tried to get him to topple over. He might need to do that again and get help against Justin Herbert, who's just a big, giant, strong, athletic human being. Is there anything we haven't covered? Like how do you think this plays out here? Patriots defense versus the Chargers offense, aside from first quarter, first down is going to be super important. As the game goes on, what are we going to see?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Chargers games just because I'm a Broncos fan, but also just because of Jesse Minter, you watch a lot of the games. I watch offense and defense, and so just trying to see how teams are doing it. I think the Patriots are solid. I think that if they can just survive through the first down, they can really figure out what they're doing. I do think you mentioned it. If the Chargers try and come out and just say, "Hey, look, we're going to see if we can pass on you," I think that would be the only thing. If you can survive early in this game, find a way to score touchdowns, don't kick field goals, I think that you're going to look up at the end of the day and you're going to be ahead. And I think that's really what you want. You want to be able to be ahead in the fourth quarter, really sit back and kind of run that clock. This is going to be an ugly game, I think. I have a feeling that it's going to be an ugly game, just in a sense that this is going to be an old school matchup where they're going to try and establish a run. They're going to try and be safe in the passing game. You're not going to see a lot of throws deep downfield just because the Chargers don't allow it. And I just don't think that the Chargers have the ability to protect that much. So to me, I think that's where I get signal on this with the offense. You're right. It's not good passing. It's not good running in terms of blocking, but they are able to move down the ball and they're able to get into scoring range. And so I think that's going to be the thing, that you just don't die the slow death. Like you got to be able to get them off the field so that they're not scoring field goals. Because this could easily be one of those games where, hey, you may score a touchdown, but they kick 5 field goals because you just couldn't get off the field because everything was short yardage and they were able to kind of pound the rock.
Yeah, and they're better in short yardage offensively, they're better in short yardage than the Patriots are, period. Like offense, defense, offense, whatever matchup you want to pick, that's an advantage for them. And that is why, again, I think they're going to be a little bit more competitive than people expect, which isn't to say people in New England, they get to blow out the Patriots, how could they lose? But there's a little disrespect for the Chargers nationally, which I do understand to a degree, but in this matchup, it's just not warranted. Hey guys, just a quick break to give you some good news in this new year about a new sponsor. And personally, this couldn't come at a better time because, we talk about my newborn daughter a lot in this podcast, the Dad Pod segment. As a new dad, I have to think about a lot of serious things, and chief among them now is life insurance. But Ethos, sponsoring this podcast, is now making getting life insurance faster and easier than ever. It is 100% online. With Ethos, you can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just have to answer a few simple health questions. And as of March 2025, in case you're not familiar with Ethos, I think you know Business Insider. Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider in the country. And according to Trustpilot, which is in the name, you can trust Trustpilot, Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars with over 3,000 reviews. Part of the reason being you can get up to $3 million in coverage, starting with some policies that are as low as $30 a month. So protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/all32, ALL32, in as little as 10 minutes. You can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/all32. That's ethos.com/all32. ethos.com/all32. Application times and rates may vary. You mentioned the red zone, and we'll finish here because it's a really good point. This is not strength versus strength in that Drake Maye throws a lot of deep balls, and the Chargers have a great deep ball defense. This is weakness on weakness. Like, they're 29th, the Chargers are in red zone offense in terms of touchdown percentage. The Patriots are dead last in touchdown percentage allowed, and it's been a problem all year. I've called it more red carpet than red zone. I don't really know what their fixes are. That just kind of is what it is at this point. But given the matchups that they have, maybe it's a jump ball to Quinn Johnson. We just talked about short yardage, but if you could shadow Keenan Allen, like, you can at least eliminate the options where you know where the ball is going to go, and you just have to hope that you made the right choices. Otherwise, if they just want to play straight up, I don't think it's a good idea, though the Chargers have struggled there. So that's hard to say where that's going to go, but both teams will feel like they have options just because of how bad the other one is inside the 20. All right, you think it's going to be low scoring? You think it's going to be ugly? And we still need a winner. So what's the final score here as you see it?
I think the Patriots win. I think it's like a 17-15, 17-13 game. I think it's going to be really low scoring. I think it's going to be ugly. I think that both are going to try and shorten the game and get out of there. Because I just think, like you said, it's not necessarily like it's kind of like strength on strength or weakness on weakness, And so and neither team really can score a lot of points, I think, at times. And I think I'm a big believer in the Chargers defense. I also believe in the Patriots defense I think the Patriots are a lot better than people give them credit for, even though, like, efficiency wise, people would say they're not. I think they've really kind of come on at the end of the year, whereas the Chargers have kind of shrunk at the end of the year. I typically like to go with the team that's kind of rising instead of the team that's falling. Like I said, it's kind of the paper tiger matchup because everybody thinks I get the Chargers because of all the injuries, but like, everybody kind of looks at it and is like, okay, there's major problems on both teams. So I do think it's like a 17-13, 17-15 game.
Yeah, I see it a little more high scoring. I'm going 24-23 because I think they're each going to scheme up an X play, maybe a long touchdown, or it could be a DPI and Carlton Davis who just cannot get away from those flags this season, and it costs them 40 yards, 50 yards, and you get in the red zone, and the Chargers have their way. But I think the Patriots will have enough control of this game where they get to the early lead. Again, water finds its level. These are two pretty evenly matched teams, and they just kind of hold on. That I think is what's going to happen here. But the first quarter is going to, I think they're going to each land some punches and then kind of settle in for all the reasons that we talked about. All right, let's talk about the best library of defensive football that's out there. MatchQuarters, sell it as best you can. I am there more often than ever nowadays, but have been there for years. So why should the people and how should the people find you and subscribe?
Yeah, if you are a defensive nerd, want to know how defenses work, especially at the NFL level and the major college level, I've got, like you said, a whole library. It's about 10 years deep. I'm doing long form articles on Monday. I do a clinic on Thursday and a clinic on Friday. So I've got a bunch of stuff going on there. I also talk football on Let's Talk Ball podcast. So all of that, you can find everything there at MatchQuarters.com.
Awesome. That was easy. He's done it before. Cody Alexander, one of the best resources you will find anywhere on football online. It would be great to have you back. I think it would probably be Super Bowl time, or just, I don't know. We'll find some time, but this was fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Anytime you want to talk ball, man, I'm down.
Awesome. Let's talk ball. There it is. Cody Alexander. Have a good one, man.
You too.